Thank you very much, Greg, and welcome to the home of Canberra Motorcycle Club in the Australian Capital Territory. The raceway is known as Fairbairn Park, and here we're hosting the first round of the New South Wales Dirt Track Championships for 1995. We'll see a full field of 125s coming to the grid shortly. Here they are now. This is their first out of 3 heats to determine who will be the 125 winner for round 1 in the New South Wales titles. All lined up fairly well. Well, Jamie Stauffer on 27 got a good start there, but I think it's Delaney that actually leads down into turn number 1. But there goes the young Novocastrian right round the outside. He's getting better drive on this 125cc motocross bike as he leads the field up the hill and through turn 2 for the first of 3.5 laps in this first heat. So it's Stauffer. Oh, we've got our 3rd place rider and our 5th place rider doing a bit of early soil sampling, a very fast section of the circuit leading into a tight hairpin. Well, there's Delaney. He's chasing after our race leader down through the right-hander into the left-hander. He pokes his nose up the inside, but in a repeat performance of the first lap, Jamie Stauffer kicks away up the hill. He's getting more drive on the outside line. He's got a nice style coming through turn 2, past the finish line there with 2 more laps to go. Stauffer brakes sliding these 125 motocross bikes. It's an art all on itself. There's Delaney. He's still chasing hard through the right-hander as they head down to the bottom section of the circuit for yet another lap around Fairbairn Park. Stauffer looks comfortable. It's his first open race meeting, believe it or not, folks. Yes, indeed, fresh out of juniors. And look at the lead that he's got in the 125cc championship round number 1 here at Fairbairn Park in Canberra. Delaney's not giving up, though. He's trying as hard as he possibly can. A nice cheeky little look over the left shoulder there by Stauffer, as both of these riders lead the field by quite a comfortable margin. And look at the brake sliding that Stauffer is entailing on that 125 motocross, and now he's got his both feet up, riding the machine hands and heels, and even got time to pop a little cheeky wheel stand too. 1 more lap to go. There's the board on the right-hand side of the picture now, but as I've said before, Delaney is not giving up the chase. The rest of the pack, though, is being led by number 42, and that's young Carlson, and he's doing a great job after missing the action in turn number 3 on the very first lap. A slower rider is now moving over to the inside of the circuit as we pick up Jamie Stauffer, making his way up through turn number 2 and almost overtaking the last place competitor. Quite a comfortable lead there for Stauffer. Delaney finishes 2nd, and Carlson will lead the rest of the pack across the line in a great 125 race, first up here at Canberra. And the Canberra Motorcycle Club has received a lot of support from local business houses, and Southern Petroleum bought you that first race. Now we're on to the gladiators of the sport, the Sidecar boys and their toys, and Boral Plasterboards brings you a full field of 5 competitors. Cooney and Priosti on the inside, and a big family orientation. Hardy and Hardy, next to them is Clark and Clark. Then we've got the local lads, Banks and Baxter, and on the extreme outside is Askew and Askew. Well, Cooney and Priosti got a good start on the inside there, but it looks like they got a box full of neutrals, and they're heading for the outside. Oh dear, and straight through the fence. Goodness me, that looks like Priosti on his side there. They certainly demolished that fence. Let's look at it in replay and see what happened. Cooney and Priosti got a good start on the inside. There's Banks and Baxter coming across in front of the field now. Yes, it looks like the front wheel clipped the rear of the sidecar, and that was a nasty accident indeed. Both of the riders, one over the back of the fence, receiving attention from the ambulance crews that were there quite promptly, as Priosti is being laden into the ambulance and taken off as a precautionary measure. And that man in the red and blue that was on your screen was actually the rider Greg Banks. He's on the 3rd from the left-hand side, so he's the rider of the sidecar, and he's got a good start again. And over on the inside there, it looks like it's Hardy and Hardy. They're getting a wheel-standing effort there as they go down into turn number 1. 3.5 laps the journey here. The 1100cc Sidecar Championship of New South Wales, round number 1. And the local boys, Greg Banks and Todd Baxter, are leading. Hardy and Hardy back there in 2nd, Askew and Askew in 3rd. And just for something different, we've got back there in 4th place Clark and Clark. Well, the local lad, Greg Banks and Todd Baxter, you can see the effort that it takes to manhandle these machines around Fairbairn Park, and they're doing a great job holding out Hardy, the combination Hardy and Hardy back there in 2nd placing. Askew and Askew still in 3rd, and Clark way back there in 4th placing. You can see the way that these machines are very tail happy as they come up to the fastest part of the circuit here, and the ruts on the inside are starting to get mountainous, and the sidecar boys are certainly having a lot of trouble handling the machines and steering it angling it into the right-hander. But in no uncertain terms, they love to hang the back end of that bike out sideways. Well, here's our race leader, Banks and Baxter, as they lead the field up the hill through the fastest part of the circuit here, and they love to hang that back end sideways, as I've said before, and they're still leading Hardy ahead of Askew. Through the left hand, you can see the ruts on the inside. That's going to cause these riders, especially the sidecar machines, some problems throughout the day. A very good technique there used by the passenger. He likes to get his body right over the side of the sidecar. As you can see, Hardy is not giving up the chase at the moment, and he's trying probably a little bit too hard, as the passenger has to get his body right out over the side. Now we've got Banks and Baxter coming across the finish line with one more lap to go, and just look at the delicateness that is needed by these passengers, making sure that they keep these sidecars well and truly balanced. They will not turn through a left-hander unless the passenger is right out over the side. As you can see, Banks and Baxter, they've got a combination that's worked for them in the past, and they're quite happy with the lead that they've got at the moment. I'm quite sure they've got probably 20 bike lengths over Hardy and Hardy, way back there in second place, and they take the checkered flag in a blaze of sliding sideways. Hardy and Hardy in second, and Askew in third place. That was heat one of the 1100cc Sidecar Championships. We've still got more action in the sidecars coming your way, but now we move on to the 125 Championship. Southern Petroleum is bringing round two, or heat two I should say, in round one of the 1995 New South Wales Championships. By gee, that young rider won't want to leave his tongue out too long, because he's certainly going to have the bit between his teeth. That's the rider on board machine number 6, and that's young Geronimi. He finished fourth in the last race, and he's certainly out there with a vengeance, trying to get the best possible start he can. But it looks like it's Delaney on board machine 32 that leads the pack up the hill. Where's young Stauffer? He's faltering back there in fourth placing, and now he's up into third as he tries to move up the inside of Carlson there on board 42. There's young Geronimi back there in fourth placing on board machine number 6. But our race leader is still Delaney. There's Carlson. He's gone a little bit too far sideways there. That's allowed Stauffer to get up within striking distance, but it's still young Delaney that leads Carlson, followed by Stauffer. As I speak, Carlson's gone a little bit too far wide there, and that's allowed Stauffer up the inside. Well, this young lad, fresh out of juniors, is a man on a mission. He's now up within striking distance of Delaney, who's been leading from the start of this race. Stauffer goes a little bit on the inside of that rut, and that's made him even closer this time around, coming through the right-hander. They're side by side. Here comes Stauffer up the inside. He pops it down a gear and gets the drive that he requires. Almost too much drive there, but it's still enough to keep him ahead of Delaney, relegating Carlson back to third placing. Side by side, our race leaders come across the fastest part of the circuit. Look at the way that Stauffer has to throw the bike a little bit further sideways there than Delaney, and courtesy of that, he's able to use that berm on the inside of the circuit to his best advantage. Delaney's not giving up though, neither is Carlson back there in third placing, and Geronimi's still heading the rest of the pack behind them. But look at the style of young Stauffer. From Newcastle this lad comes from, and he's a man with a big future in dirt track racing. One more lap to go, still Stauffer ahead of Delaney. Carlson trying to poke his nose up the inside of Delaney in a last lap effort of trying to get some valuable points, because there's more points for finishing second than there is for third, but not as many as first, and young Stauffer's doing a great job out there in front. Delaney still holding on to second, but only just ahead of Carlson back there in third. Well, here comes our race leader up the hill through turn number 2, checkered flag on display using all of the circuit, takes it out in convincing style. Delaney in second, Carlson in third. Well, that's it for now, folks, but don't go away, because there's plenty more dirt track action later in the show. Very much, Greg, and yes, we return to Fairbairn Park Raceway at the business end of proceedings. This will be the last qualifying heat of the sidecars, the 1100cc Championship for 1995, and that combination right on your screen now, the Woodhead brothers from Gunnedah. They're certainly men on a mission, and in no uncertain terms asserted their authority early on in the race today. But Jaeger and Hope got the best of the start, but not for long. There go the Woodheads, and look at that, 3 deep down in turn number 2, and here comes Hardy round the outside of Ivanov and Lennon. They're rushing in fourth place there, ahead of Askew and Askew, as they lead the field across the finish line for the first of 3.5 laps. The Woodhead combination looked quite comfortable. That's a game move from Hardy, right up around the outside of Jaeger and Hope. Consequently, they're now slotting themselves into second placing as young Hardy grabs on for grim death as they head down out of the right-hander and into the fast left-hander at the bottom of the circuit. Then it's all uphill from here, and you can see the angle of the circuit there now on your screen. Ivanov and Lennon, they've gone exceptionally wide there. They're very lucky they didn't hit the outside edge of the circuit, but they're holding down fourth, trying to get up as close as they possibly can to Jaeger and Hope on board machine number 50 there. But as you can see, folks, there's not much room for these sidecars to be able to manoeuvre. The only place possibly for them to pass is right here, where our race leader is leading by about 12 bike lengths over the rest of the pack at the moment. Woodhead and Woodhead is their name. Gunnedah is where they hail from, and don't forget it, folks, they're certainly asserting their authority in no uncertain terms here at Canberra, Fairbairn Park. The Hardy boys, they're still in second place, but Jaeger and Hope, they're the ones with all the pressure being placed on them by the combination in the distinctive pink-coloured leathers. Their name is Ivanov and Lennon, and they're rushing right up the rear of the Gunnedah combination. They lost out a little bit there by going too far sideways through the right-hander, and now they find themselves under threat from Askew and Askew, and Hardy, they've got all sorts of balance problems there, and well, they might look at each other. Our race leader, meanwhile, takes the last lap to go board, still comfortably in second placing. Even time for a cheeky look over the right shoulder by the passenger there on board machine number 7, the Hardy and Hardy combination. But look how comfortable Darryl Woodhead is. He's the rider. He's sitting with a straight up and down posture. He's not got any problems at all in handling this circuit here at Fairbairn Park, and it looks like they're going to take out their second consecutive heat in the 1100cc Sidecar Championship, which holds them in good stead considering that they've defeated Hardy and Hardy in second, Jaeger and Hope in third, and the fast finishing Ivanov and Lennon in fourth placing. But now we turn to the final heat in this round one of the 125cc Championship for 1995, brought to you by Southern Petroleum. And look at the concentration on these youngsters on board the 125s. There's young Jamie Stauffer on the inside. He's had 2 from 2 so far. Will it be 3 from 3? The gate drops forward towards the riders. One of them got momentarily caught there, and Stauffer right up the inside he goes. Back there in second placing is Delaney, and Conquest on board the Kawasaki right round the outside. There's Carlson on 42 in the background there. Will he have the chance to poke his nose up the inside of Conquest? No, he doesn't. The Kawasaki mounted rider is still up there in third placing, but a veritable gaggle of riders back there in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Too many to keep on going down the field. Conquest has gone too wide. That's allowed Carlson on board machine number 42, the red Honda, to slot himself up into fourth placing. But look at the comfortable lead that young Jamie Stauffer has over his arch rival, the rider of machine number 32, Delaney, back there in second placing. This is a repeat performance so far for the first 2 placings anyway. Carlson back in fourth. He's made his way up past Conquest as our race leader Jamie Stauffer negotiates the corner known as the hairpin here, turn number 3, and it's rutting out very badly. Delaney's not giving up though. He's going to chase this rider out in front of him, young Jamie Stauffer, right down to the wire. Stauffer quite confident, riding the bike hands and heels, popping a wheel stand, having a look over his left shoulder as he's still riding hands and heels through the fastest part of this circuit. Back there in second placing, the man with a bit firmly and squarely between his teeth is young Delaney. He's trying to chase down the leader Stauffer, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it. A little over 1 more lap for these riders to negotiate here at Canberra's Fairbairn Park. And look at the style of the young Novocastrian Jamie Stauffer as he still leads the field, using up all of the circuit. 1 more lap to go for these riders. Back there in fourth placing on board machine number 42 is young Carlson. He's doing it hard as Stauffer's doing it even harder as using up all of the suspension down through turn number 3, through the right-hander, flicking it from left to right as our second place competitor Delaney makes his way down, still chasing, not giving up the race at this stage, but Stauffer leads the field quite convincingly. 3 wins from 3 starts. He'll take out the championship round 1 of 1995. Second place will go to Delaney and third to Carlson. Now let's turn our attention to the Ball Plasterboard 1100cc Sidecar Championship final. Hardy was on your screen there, but over on the inside it's Woodhead and Woodhead. Next to them is Jaeger and Hope. Then squashed right in the middle, firmly in the middle, is the local lads, Banks and Baxter, and they got the best of the start. And the left wheel on the Woodheads there were coming up high, wide and handsome. Ivanov and Lennon rushing right round the outside of the field there, unable to keep the power down to the ground. And it's Woodhead and Woodhead from Gunnedah that leads in second placing at the moment, but not for long by the looks of it. The local boys, Banks and Baxter, rubbing shoulders. You can easily see why these sidecar passengers are called the square monkeys of the sport. The left-hand shoulder is always squared off. But nevertheless, as the field makes their way down to the bottom end of the circuit for yet another lap here, completing the first lap, Banks and Baxter from Canberra have not given up the ghost. This is by far and away the closest that they've been to the Woodhead boys from Gunnedah as they lead the field across the strike line one more time. Look at Banks and Baxter. They were looming up around the outside there. They wanted to poke their nose around the outside. They've gone to the inside. That's cost them a lot of race distance. It looked like the bike actually jumped into neutral there momentarily, and you can now see the gap on the screen before your eyes that our race leader, Woodhead and Woodhead, has over Banks and Baxter. You can see how hard Banks and Baxter are trying, and Banks looking around to his left to see how far behind Hardy is, and he's far enough not to be a problem at the moment. Askew and Askew in fourth. Ivanov and Lennon right out to the outside of the circuit. Very lucky not to hit the berm on the high side of the circuit there. Banks and Baxter, they're probably in with the decent chance here of at least bridging the gap between Woodhead and Woodhead. Better than anybody else in the field at this stage anyway, but a real battle going on for the minor placings. The Hardy boys leading the Askew boys. I said this was a family sport earlier on in the program, and I meant it. That's evident by the number of double names that are on these sidecar combinations. Jager and Hope at the rear of the field there, trying as hard as they can. Ivanov and Lennon up the inside as they make their way through the slowest part of the circuit. But Askew and Askew says, sorry boys, the low line's not the way to go. The drive's on the outside of that hairpin turn. Well, the Gunnedah boys, Woodhead and Woodhead, they're leading the field yet again, and Banks and Baxter, the local lads, have not given up the chase though. They come past the strike line, and they're a mile in front of Hardy and Hardy, who are engaged in a battle royale for third placing with Askew, and behind them Ivanov and Lennon, and the last one across the line with one more lap to go is Jager and Hope. You can see how close these sidecars are. This is third, fourth, fifth and sixth placing, and right down the bottom end of the circuit, here they are, our race leaders. They'll take out the championship points for round one of the 1995 Dirt Track Championships ahead of the local boys, Banks and Baxter. Will Hardy hang on? I think he can, but only just ahead of Askew and Askew. Then in fifth placing, it's Ivanov and Lennon, and Jager and Hope taking evasive action towards the end of that race. We trust that you've enjoyed your first taste of dirt track action. Next week, the 250s and 500s come your way, but now let's go to Steve Raymond and the GTI. Steve, and welcome to Canberra's Fairbairn Park for the running of round one of the 1995 New South Wales Dirt Track Championships. The types of machinery that you'll be seeing in action today: the conventional motocross bike as ridden by Jamie Stauffer from Newcastle, the gladiators of the field, the sidecar boys and their toys, the Woodhead brothers from Gunnedah. They'll be out there giving it their best shot. So too will the man that we're about to interview, 29 times Australian Dirt Track champion Chris Watson from Newcastle on his dirt track slider. Welcome to Canberra for round one, Chris.
Thanks, Lance.
How's the action so far? You've been out for your early practice session. What's the circuit conditions like?
The track is very fair, I think, to both types of bikes today. The sliders are going to do a little bit harder than the day. The motocross bikes with the wider, slicker tyres will find it easier. I think it's good racing.
And you're coming back from injury after a long track accident over at Port Pirie. How are you feeling?
I got a bit of a sore wrist still. I broke my wrist and shoulder about 4 weeks ago, and a little bit sore, but at the end of the day, hopefully be okay.
All the very best of luck. Hopefully another New South Wales title coming your way.
We can try. Thanks.
Well, let's see how Chris Watson does in this, the first heat of the Can-Do Carpentry Services 500cc Championship for 95. He started slow on the extreme outside. Gavin Mate going up the inside. There's Tony Primmer even closer on the inside, but Watson swoops around the outside and takes up the running and heads the field up the hill here at Canberra's Fairbairn Park for the first of 3.5 laps. You'll notice the difference in the riding styles of the first 4 competitors over the rest of the field as compared to those that you saw last week. Watson goes a little bit too wide there. The sliders, they're certainly finicky little bikes indeed, and they need to be continually slid around a corner as opposed to the motocross riders and their styles, which means that they've got to go on the extreme inside nice and hard, brake late, and then power on early. We pick the field up as they come past the strike line on the second lap, and it's Gavin Mate that leads over Tony Primer in second placing. He takes a little bit of a lower line there compared to Gavin Mate, and in third placing, 29 times Australian champion Chris Watson. Have a look at the way that these riders slide their bikes through the right, then swoop across to the left-hand side. Tony Primer, he's in second place. He hasn't given up the chase over Gavin Mate out there in front. Tony Primer, son of Greg Primer of the 1980 era, a renowned dirt track rider throughout Australia, winning multi-championships, as to the man in third placing, Chris Watson. Look at the different lines that they're taking. Watson in that time around, he's gone a little bit wider of the ruts on the inside of that left-hander, but that means that he's got a better style through the right-hander. Gavin Mate, he's riding this bike hands and heels up the hill. He likes to slide it towards the outside. That's allowed Primer up the inside side by side through the fastest part of this circuit, but Mate, he takes the lead into the hairpin turn for the last time here at Canberra, and that means that young Tony Primer on board machine 25 on screen now has to slide himself into second placing. He's not given up though, neither has Watson, but Watson last lap around was looking down at the bike, and it looks like he might have some minor mechanical problems. So coming up the hill for the last time, Gavin Mate, he knows he's got victory in sight. Checkered flag on display. Gavin Mate in first, Tony Primer second, and Chris Watson looking down at the engine. Definitely mechanical problems, but taking third placing. The Specialty Fasteners 250cc Championship, heat number 1 on the line now. A fairly even start. Everybody getting a good start there across the line. Taking the early lead, though, down into turn 1 is Anderson. Riders all over the place. The rider in about 5th place in there. He's gone in a little bit too hard, hit the back of the bike in front of him, consequently lost the front end, and he's now got his backside trackside. Number 97 it is that leads up the hill. It's young Anderson. There's Steve Croker in second placing, slotting himself up into third as Bisley, and Nathan Williams on board 72 in about 4th placing. So leading the field down through the right-hander for the first of 3.5 laps, it's Anderson on board number 97, and he has rather a commanding lead over the rest of the field. Just look at the different styles on board these motocross bikes that the riders need to execute. The style is so much different to the slider that you see on screen there now, young Patton. All of them now side by side almost as they enter the braking area, known as the hairpin turn, turn number 3. Just look at the body language, the movement on board the bikes by these riders, as evident there by Steve Croker on number 94. He's sliding from one side of the machine to the other as Bisley now pops his nose in a cheeky move up the inside of Croker, but it's Anderson that still leads as Croker now pops his nose up around the outside of Anderson, side by side going through the fastest section of the circuit. That's allowed Bisley up the inside. They're almost rubbing shoulders and swapping paint brands as they go into the hairpin turn there. They're all side by side. Well, Anderson has lost out there. Croker's now on the inside leading. Bisley's gone so far wide he's had to cut across the daisies on the inside of the field, and Nathan Anderson on board number 72 has slotted himself up into third placing. Great action as I speak. Anderson up into second placing, Bisley up into third placing. Well, what was once first is now back to fourth. The rider I'm referring to is young Anderson. So Croker it is that leads. Williams in second, Bisley third, Anderson relegated quite comprehensively back to fourth placing. Williams is a real mover and shaker in the field at the moment on board 72. He's now slotting himself, lining himself up, I should say, for a manoeuvre around the outside of Steve Croker if he can possibly get the drive out of turn number 1 down the bottom of the course. There goes Bisley up the inside of Anderson now, side by side almost as they go across the line. Croker in first, Bisley second, and Williams having to settle for third. Well, the man on the extreme left-hand side of your screen just then was Wayne Clark from Can Do Carpentry Services, and he brings you the next race on the program, heat number 2 of the 500cc Championship. Well, will it be the motocrossers or the sliders that reign supreme in this, the second heat of the 500cc Championship? Mueller on the inside, Matthew Poole on the only slider in the field, taking a very wide line, almost turning himself completely around there. That's allowed Mueller to overtake him on the inside, and moving up into second placing is Allgood on board machine number 51, but not for very long. Matthew Poole has now taken over the running of second placing on the slider, riding it more reminiscent of the style that is required of a motocross rider. He wasn't getting the bike sideways very much at all. That's because the man on screen, Tony Hyde, on board his Yamaha, was on the outside of him. A dangerous place to be if you're on a slider compared to a motocross bike. Let's pick up the leader as he comes up through the fastest part of the section now, and it's number 11, Mueller, that leads the field. Matthew Poole is now making up inroads there. Look for him sliding the bike on the exit of this hairpin turn. Fairly rough on the inside there. You can see the way he picked his front wheel up with the extra drive that he got on the exit of that turn. A little bit tentative through the right-hander. Now he goes into a more reminiscent of a speedway style as he makes his way back up through the fastest section of the circuit. All the time, Mueller is still out in front. Hyde back there in third placing, and he's the best of the rest at this stage. Matthew Poole in second placing, kicks the gearbox on the side of the bike, down one gear. Now he's sliding through the right-hander. He's got that tail a little bit more the way that a slider bike should have it. Now he's slotting himself into second place in a speedway style slide. Up around the outside of Mueller, he comes in a threat to overtake him on the extreme outside. Will he be able to do it? Side by side, Poole swoops around the outside and takes up the lead with one more lap to go. Mueller has to slot himself and be happy with second placing at this stage. Now Matthew Poole's got that rear end of the slider working the way that it should do on these 500cc machines. Mueller's still got his head firmly placed over the front of that motocross bike in an attempt to make up for the lost ground on that last lap. Matthew Poole a little bit off screen. Now he comes into sight as he slides the bike towards the outside of the circuit and greets the checkered flag in first placing. He's followed by Mueller, and in third was Hyde. More dirt track action later in the program, but right now it's over to Steve Raymond. Well, thank you, Greg. Yes, indeed, plenty of action at Oran Park. But right now, speaking about action, we've got the specialty fasteners, Heat 2 of the 250cc Championship. This is round 1 in the New South Wales Dirt Track Championship for 1995. And you're at Canberra's Fairbairn Park as the riders in the 250cc Heat number 2 make their way up to the line, and away they go with Steve Croker on the extreme inside doing the best of the field, of the starts at least. On the extreme outside there on board the Yamaha, the white machine, that's young Lamarsny, and he's slotted himself up into second placing just ahead of, I think it was young Jamie Stauffer on board machine 27. No, in fact, it was number 21, and that was young Roland Kruk. There's Stauffer on the inside. They're rubbing shoulders as they exit the hairpin and head down towards the right-hander. Daniel Breen on board machine number 78, the Kawasaki. So we have a good mix of motocross solos here in the 250cc race. Steve Croker on board a Honda, rather a commanding lead, about 6 or 7 bike lengths over Lamarsny on board the white Yamaha. There's Stauffer on board another Honda trying to get right around the outside of him, and Daniel Breen on machine number 7. Oh, Stauffer's bit the dust. Lamarsny's gone right over the top of him. Both riders look like they're okay, but young Jamie Stauffer just lost the front end, as quite often happens on these motocross bikes. If you don't have the balance right, the delicate balance required to ride one of these machines in the style that you see that Croker is riding at the moment. You must slide the bike, but you must brake in rather an upright position. Third placing there on screen now, Kruk on board the Honda. So we have Honda, Kawasaki, Honda, no Yamahas and no Suzukis left at the front end of the pack. A bit of a chitter-chatter there on the front end of young Daniel Breen's bike. He's now got himself his sights firmly set on the race leader as he heads down the bottom of the hill here at Fairbairn Park. Fairbairn Park, the Motorcycle Club of Canberra, the promoters here, quite a large complex with a motocross circuit. The old Kamagutsa motocross circuit over on the outside of this dirt track circuit, host to the great racing known as the Mr. Motocross series throughout the 1980s. Final lap now, Daniel Breen trying to run down the lead on the rider out in front, Steve Croker. Croker, meanwhile, moves his body weight up over the tank of this bike. It's important to get the body weight forward, but not too far forward, otherwise you could lose the front end like young Stauffer did earlier on in the race, and consequently he's now way down the back of the pack. Croker leads though. He's got a commanding lead indeed. Checkered flag on display. Wheel stand popped by Croker in first, Daniel Breen in second, and a long way back to third, Roland Kruk in third placing. As our minor placings come past the finish line now, where's Jamie Stauffer? There he is on screen now. It looks like he's up and okay. The 125 champion for 95 finishes the 250 championship. But now, the big one, folks, the Can-Do Carpentry Services 500cc championship final of round 1 in the New South Wales Dirt Track titles for 1995. The hot favourite has to be Chris Watson. He's in the middle of the pack there on board the slider. Matthew Poole getting a good start round the outside. Gavin Mate takes up the early running though on the inside in the green leathers. Matthew Poole's almost turned himself to the inside of the circuit. So we have 4 sliders now being separated by Mark Whalen on board the motocross Honda. Watson on the outside, Mate on the inside. Then comes Whalen, followed by Breen, Matthew Poole and Tony Primer taking evasive action on the inside of that rough section of the circuit. Gavin Mate slots himself back into second placing. Meanwhile, the runaway leader at the moment, if you can call it a runaway lead, Chris Watson, 29 times Australian dirt track champion. So many New South Wales titles under his belt, it's not funny, as a rider has fallen down in the background there, gets himself up and going again. Watson looks like he's set to add yet another New South Wales title to his repertoire. Oh, coming out of the left-hander there, Watson and Mate clashed. Watson's rear wheel as he slid it on the outside of the circuit there as is required by these dirt track sliders, actually ran into the side of Gavin Mate's bike. As Watson makes his way up the hill, he's looking down on the side of the bike. I wonder if there's some damage to the rear of that machine. Let's certainly hope not for Watson's sake. Oh dear, he's got a rear flat tyre. These dirt track sliders will not control. They're very, very difficult to handle at the best of times, let alone when you've got a rear flat tyre. These bikes, the sliders I'm talking about, require a lot of centrifugal force. The rear wheel must be sliding to give them the all-important drive, as seen on screen now by Tony Primer. Well, that's handed the lead over to Mark Whalen on board machine number 31, the motocross bike. Rather different to the sliders as we've talked about throughout the racing today. Gavin Mate slotting himself into second placing, quite comfortable with that at the moment, but he wants the all-important first place points, because the points they score in this first round carry through to the second round at Ballina and the final round at Raymond Terrace, just north of Newcastle. Talking about the battles, here they come, almost side by side, as Mate on the slider goes to the outside, now to the inside. He won't want to slot himself up on the inside too quickly there of Whalen as they head off on their last lap. Both riders taking the inside line on that rutty left-hander, the hairpin turn at Canberra's Fairbairn Park. Mate goes a little bit far sideways there. He's trying to get the drive around the outside of Whalen. He's gone into the loose dirt on the outside. I don't think he's going to be able to do it, but it's going to be one of the closest finishes of the day. Whalen, he'll take the checkered flag, and he's certainly a happy chappy, throwing the left fist in the air. Gavin Mate in second, and Bisley in third placing. Now we move on to the 250cc Championship final for 1995, round 1, and that, of course, is brought to you by Specialty Fasteners. Away they go now, Stephen Croker, the man that's been dominant in the 250 class so far today. But there's Chris Watson on board the 250cc slider. The machine is a 250cc two-stroke, as opposed to the 4 strokes in the 500cc category, and Watson's got a comfortable lead at the moment, slotting himself up into third placing there as Croker, and a battle royale for the minor placings. Daniel Primer slots himself up into second placing on board the Kawasaki and certainly sets his sights on the race leader Chris Watson. A game move up the inside on the motocross bike, but if you're going to overtake a slider in dirt track action, then that's the way to do it, on the inside, not the outside. Side by side, nobody's asking or giving any quarter, and young Primer takes over the running at the moment. Watson slots himself back into second placing. These high-revving 250cc motocross bikes are certainly dominating the 250 and 125 category here at Canberra's Fairbairn Park today. Watson slots himself back in second place. A big speedway and dirt track slide as he comes out of turn 1, heads up the hill, but all the while, young Primer has taken over the running, and he's certainly bolting away with it at this stage. Back there in third placing, it looks like Bisley. There's Breen and the other Bisley, Ken Bisley, on the outside on board machine number 46. There's Ian Bisley on 88. He's slotted himself up into third placing, and he's the best of the rest at this stage. Croker back in fourth. Meanwhile, here comes Watson. Oh, he got the power a little bit too early onto the ground there, and consequently went a little bit too far sideways and lost all the momentum that is required to keep these 250cc sliders percolating at top performance. Down through the right-hander for the second last time now, and young Primer had a cheeky look over his left shoulder there on the exit of the hairpin turn, and all he could see was the whites of the eyes of the rider in second placing. 29 times Australian dirt track champion Chris Watson from Cessnock. He's a little bit far back now to be within contention with only one more lap to go. So placing's unchanged at this stage over the last couple of circuits of Canberra's Fairbairn Park. Out there in front, it's Primmer. Second placing, it's Watson, who's now under a little bit of threat from Ian Bisley in third placing, I beg your pardon, on board the motocross Honda. And Watson, if he doesn't watch his tail, will not only miss out on first place points, but may well be relegated back to third. I don't think so, though, with one more turn to go. Checkered flag on display. A great win for young Primmer. Second placing going to Watson and third placing to Bisley. Well, that wraps it up on Speed Week this time around for dirt track action. Congratulations to the Motorcycle Club of Canberra. But right now, with one of the highlights of the Summer Speedway season, here's